Today on Riffs, Beards, and Gear, we are going to check out the HDI Active DI box from Radial. So for the last couple of months, I've actually been going down the DI rabbit hole. I have had a JDI Stereo DI. I have had a Pro 48 Radial box. I've even had some non-Radial boxes like this Countryman Associates DI, which are all very capable and very good. However, the problem I was running into was I was having to run all of my DIs into a preamp because these are not line level output. And when you do that, you're adding another gain stage going into your interface. And why that is a potentially an issue is because my level coming in was not necessarily accurate to what the level of my guitar was actually putting out. Now enter my problem solver. This is the HDI from Radial, and this thing is much, much more than just a simple DI box. Now, before we go any further, this video is made possible by Sweetwater. Sweetwater can cover all of your needs for any project using a DI or a stereo DI for any range of instruments, from acoustic guitars, electric guitars, bass guitars. They got you covered for all things DI. However, for this video, all thoughts and opinions are mine. Now, when you look at the Radial HDI, you will immediately notice a couple of different things. This thing is physically much, much larger than your average DI, active or passive. That is because this is basically a DI with a bunch of different parallel circuits that you blend in and out of each other to get various combinations of colored or non-colored tones, depending on what you want to do. Also, this the steel metal housing on the front really adds some heft when you pick this thing up, and this can also be rack mounted or on, just placed on the desktop like I use it. So you have three primary controls for the HDI. You have the level, which of course will set your level of your DI. You have your color, and you have your presence. Now, from left to right, we have two input jacks. We have an input, and then we have a through right below that. So we can output the 1/4 inch input out the front or the back as well. We'll get to the back in just a second. We have a high Z switch for active pickups or something like, an acoustic guitar, piezo, something like that. We also have the level control. Now, the level control for me is where I want to make sure that I'm coming in unity gain most of the time to what my instrument is actually outputting. And for the HDMI, or for the HDI, excuse me, this is actually right at noon, conveniently. Next, we have a 3-way Opto Switch, which we will get to in just a second. We have a color knob, which the color knob, the more you turn up, the more it's going to add some grit, some distortion, and some saturation characteristics that you can then control with the high pass filter switch located right next to it. And then, of course, we have the presence control, which is going to add some upper mids and top end to your DI signal. Well, let's go ahead and go back to the Opto Switch on the HDI. Now, when I am tracking specifically bass guitar, I typically will like to add a little bit of compression to control the top end transients of the string whipping back and forth, because it can get kind of pokey. And typically I will use a pedal compressor before my DI. And I'm not talking real severe or aggressive, just a little tiny bit to control the transients. Well, you no longer need an external compressor with the HDI. You have this opto compression circuit that you can control depending on where the color is blending in. And then if that is building up a little bit more of a low end than you want, as a result of the distortion, you then use the high pass filter to then kind of control the amount of roll off on the low end. How cool is that? So moving to the back of the HDI, we have a couple of outputs that I think are really critical for use without a preamp when using the HDI. Notice that this actually has a mic output and a line output. Most DIs do not have a line level output. This means you can go directly into your converter without having to worry about any additional gain staging or coloring that you don't maybe want if I was going to go into a Neve 1073 preamp to get into my interface or something like that. This is just a direct out into your interface. I love this part. This maintains my level and my gain staging. In addition to that, you also have a processed output, 1/4 inch output for feeding a Kemper or an amplifier or something like that. And you also have an input, which is also basically a clone of the input that is on the front panel. Now, what do we think of the HDI? This has actually been an incredible workflow improvement for me personally, because I no longer have to get and wire up an external pedal when I'm tracking a bass part. I no longer have to worry about that pedal's power supply. I also don't really have to worry about any noise issues with the HDI. This has been an absolute godsend for versatility depending on the instrument that I am recording. Typically with the guitar, I will keep the color down because I want my guitar signal to be clean. But with the bass guitar, I'll crank the color up and add some grit and add some distortion, and also engage the opto circuit to kind of level out the bass guitar. And it just has everything sounding really, really great. It's a little expensive. Yes, this is, twice the cost of a given more mainstream, less featured DI. However, the features that you get with these custom transformers in this thing is really, really incredible. So if you are a professional that is doing this every single day and you're looking at other things like Avalon, definitely consider the Radial HDI. And I'm holding this like a pizza, and it's much, much heavier than a pizza, and I'm going to put this down. However, special shout out to my friends over at Sweetwater for making this video possible. And with that, I will link down below in the description for all things Radial and all things HDI. You've been wonderful. I've been Fluff. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.